In just a few hours, President Ramaphosa will deliver his fifth State of the Nation address, all against a backdrop of a faltering economy, deepening unemployment, and a stalled vaccine rollout. The President's speech will reflect on the past year, no doubt, and set out strategic goals of his government for the year ahead. Easier said than done, though. Let's look ahead to 7 o'clock this evening with Professor Miriam Altman, Professor of Economics at the University of Johannesburg, also with the National Planning Commission. Professor, good afternoon to you and welcome. Are you concerned that the speech tonight is going to be light on detail and big on promise, as we've seen before, or will we get something of substance?
Oh, well, let's remember what the SONA is. The SONA is a rallying cry for the year. It's not meant to be a detailed implementation plan of everything that's going to happen. But what we do need to see is an emphasis on delivery. The people are going to want to see something pretty concrete on vaccines and on how we secure the economy.
It's about tone and substance, but he's also, no doubt, Professor, got to rise above this so-called family meeting that we've had on numerous occasions over the past year. This is very different and this is very serious. For instance, on the vaccines, what more do we need?
Well, I'd like to cut to the chase in terms of what we need across the board. The National Planning Commission has issued a series of reports, most recently in December, on the economy. And even though it's an economic report, over 80% of the recommendations focus on leadership capacity, performance. We have to be looking right across the board, including in the vaccine rollout, at the quality of leadership. We know over the past decade, a lot of capacity has been destroyed, and we see that problem right across the board. You see it in the vaccine rollout, you see it in the compliance with health protocols, in the quality of public health services, in the ability to deliver in the key state-owned enterprises and delivery around municipalities, in all the key locations where delivery happens. And what is going to give confidence across the board, it's the vaccines, but it's a broader set of issues. Is the capability to procure, to run like a proper bureaucracy is really where our core problem lies right now.
It's a very important point. How then does he address this issue of quality of leadership, given that it's not something new in this country?
Yeah, well, it's not new in the sense that, every country, frankly, has to build up a bureaucracy, and every country struggles with strengthening performance and delivery in the public sector, I can promise you. And then remember, we came out of apartheid, so there was a complete reorientation of the state over that period. And we were rebuilding for a state that, not rebuilding, we were building a state that could deliver to the entire population, because that's not what the previous state was aimed at doing. And we didn't, and over the past decade, we speak about state capture, which was specifically targeted at destroying capacity so that people could steal more easily. Corruption doesn't necessarily lead to a failed state. There are plenty of very functional states, and it's not a recommendation for corruption, I can promise you. But there are plenty of states like Malaysia, Vietnam, and others that function and move forward and have deep corruption problems, but they don't destroy their own capacity. You see, that's the big difference. So this is why what we're saying, even around the economy, is that most of what we need to do isn't, strictly speaking, economic recommendations. It's to make sure that those institutions are chugging along. So what we do in this report is we try to make clear, not at a high level, we need stronger leadership, for example, but rather to say, what are the key locations? Revenue services, the budget office, the top infrastructure, state-owned enterprises need boards that are appointed in a certain way and are stable, need executive management that are appointed and stable. When you look at the top municipalities where we have big arrears and backlogs in infrastructure delivery, the top 6 in these municipalities, such as the CFO and these kinds of roles, they're supposed to be appointed in a particular way according to COCTA and the Back to Basics program. So we need to do it. So what we're trying to do in the Planning Commission is to elevate and elucidate for government, but also for civil society, so that people can coalesce around a very practical agenda about how we start building capacity.
Professor Altman, the rebuild debate is an important one. It's also a mammoth task, but you will also concede, you've listed apartheid, then you've listed a decade of state capture, that there is growing impatience in this country to get this right. You've cited Vietnam as a very good example where they have absorbed the problems but have still managed to grow at an incremental rate.
Well, the thing you have to remember is we point to countries in our report that came out of backgrounds that are no less evil and corrupt and challenging. I mean, Vietnam came out of 20 years of war. 1 million people died, North and South divides. Colombia is another example of a country one would never have thought would progress. And they do struggle, but they do progress a little bit every year. And that's what you need to grow and start eating into this problem. So there's no doubt that it's possible. And unfortunately, sometimes we make this a little bit more complicated than it is, in the sense that this is why, we focus on the institutions. There is no country that can progress without an investment in institutions and people. It's the difference between a country that progresses and one that doesn't. And unfortunately, we tend to focus on the what we need to do, like we need to procure energy, we need to strengthen the ports, we need to strengthen education, and no doubt we have to have those kind of North Star statements. But right now, what we're saying is the critical issue is the critical reason why we aren't making progress, even in areas where we can agree we want to move forward, is because the capacity has become so thin. So this is the area where we're saying precisely where we need to prioritize at the moment. I gave examples of a list. The report lays out where we think the key locations are in relation to economic delivery.
Thank you very much for joining us.
So it's real.
Professor
of
Economics at the University of Johannesburg. I do appreciate the insight. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's stay